All right. All right. Is there anything with the scheduled template in general that you'd like to say?
So we revamped the template a little bit, pared it down, and we'll be sending this out, but we essentially removed all the logic, removed all the durations. The goal of that was to make it so that as you're building the project, you're thinking about it a little bit more, thinking about the relationships between tasks instead of just having to do everything for you, and that might not be right for your project. So it's very similar to how it used to be. There's probably more tasks on there than you need, but the idea is just to have that spur on thoughts. That way you can build out your schedule and then continue to add to it.
All right. Awesome. So who has used Microsoft Project before? Anybody here used it before? Okay. Anybody here like never opened and never used it? Okay. Do you have it on your computer?
Yeah.
For people, you don't have it? Okay. Bummer. Okay. Well, all right. So first we'll kind of just go through, we'll just kind of go through like an overview of the template in general. And then a lot of this will be like discussion based for this first one. And then, so basically, I should have sent this out, but this is just kind of like an agenda of what I'm going to talk about. But first, we're just going to go over like the schedule template itself, and then go over answering questions about like how to set up weather, just general how to show delays. And this will all be kind of outside of the software, but just more conversation based if you guys have questions on that. Hello, good to see you. Good, how are you? And then we'll talk about like managing the float and building in the float. And reviewing the critical path. So I'll kind of go through each of those topics before we get into the software of just like questions you guys have. So then it helps me with, while we go through the training, kind of what to highlight on. Does that make sense?
This that you got right here, have that one open up on the screen?
Not yet, yeah. Okay, so like Micah was saying, so this is this, oh. I guess the sound works.
I'm in there now.
You guys don't
It'll be on there. No.
All right, no, it's all good. We can wait a couple. I mean, it's okay. We can wait a couple minutes. It's no big deal. Okay, are you guys ready? Okay, sounds good. Okay, so this is the schedule template. If you can see my screen. So basically it goes through, this is like pretty basic, but it has, as you can see, there's no like durations or dates populated in. That's what Michael was saying for as far as like, it's set up so that it's actually like functional for you to utilize. If things don't relate to your project, you can take them out. But basically it's just a starting point. And then it also has the colors, and we can modify the colors if you guys like, just general, but just kind of keep everything consistent with like the branding. So basically when you go to the print preview, ideally everything will be set up for you. It will go back until you set your printer. But once you set your printer, you should see it. So like if you use Bluebeam printer, this is all steps that we'll go through again in detail. But you should see everything set up the way that you like it once we're done, formatting it. So then you'll start with a point where a lot of the stuff you don't have to set up. But we're still going to go through the process of how to set that up so that so that you can modify anything that you need to. So that's kind of like the general what it's for. So basically, we're going to go through the training of how to set everything up yourself, but then the schedule template will have most of that stuff set up for you. So you know how to do it and you know how to modify it, but then there's a lot of like busy work that you don't have to do, is the idea of it. Is there any questions on that or anything anyone would like to add? Okay, perfect. So first topic is how to set up the weather. So in the past, have you guys typically thought about the weather, or have you set it up in a schedule, or do you have any like preliminary questions on that?
Most everybody in here does it. Excel.
Okay.
That's old school.
Okay, sure. Okay, sounds good. So typically what we'll do, and this is just like preference as well, but typically what we'll do is we'll have a weather bank at the end that I think the standard is like 3 days per month, right? is your typical. So we'll do 3 days per month on the project. So say, and this is going to be jumping around a little bit in just the first overview chapter, and then we'll go into everything into more detail. But basically, so say you had a 6-month project, right? You had 6 months until dry-in on your project. We would have 18 weather days. So then we would just type in an 18 here and then let it populate the duration for you. So that's how you would take this and say, okay, first thing, setting up the weather, let's plug in our weather days. Once you update, that's gonna, obviously you're gonna plug in the weather days differently once you update. But from a preliminary standpoint, we'll say, okay, we have 6 months of weather dependent activities. Here's 18 weather days. And then we can go ahead and take this off of the manually scheduled, make it auto. So then you can see it looks like a normal schedule activity in the bar chart, and it's good to go there. So that would be how you set up your weather, and your weather days is going to be a bank at the end of the schedule. So it's going to basically be your own float to use as you go. So as you encounter the weather days, then you take it out of your float bank. And then ideally, like you never have less than 18 weather days in a schedule, because say you encounter your 3 weather days in January, then you're going to have those 3 weather days actually in your schedule, and then you're taking them off the end because you took them from the end and put them here as you're using them. Does that make sense, like the idea of a bank? Okay, perfect. Any other questions on that? I mean, that's like I guess that's like jumping right into,
So
jumping right in, but
So you have 18, okay?
this
And
is
so
right,
you're just saying at day one, we have 18 days.
correct.
And
So
you're not
mhm,
actually calculating how many you actually have.
correct.
So where are you gonna put
Mhm.
those?
So those are in the bank. So basically what you have allotted for in your contract goes in the bank. So if your contract says that you have 3 weather days that you have to make up on your own per month, this is where you're putting them for your own days that you have to make up. So then you don't, right, so then you don't lose them once you encounter them. So it's your own way of like building those in as float so that you have them and you don't, because a lot of people forget to build them in. So then immediately as soon as you have a weather day, you already lost days. So this is basically how you don't lose the days. The alternative to a bank would be to have Saturday makeup days, but that's just risky because if it rains on a Saturday, you don't have that. So is there anything that you want to add to that, or
Yeah,
Micah?
the idea is that we are already projecting the amount of days that we're gonna lose for rain. If we don't project that from the beginning, then we're already gonna be behind, because we are gonna lose days for rain that we gotta eat based on our contract. So
Mhm.
as we record the days, when we record one day, we take one day off the bank. We record another day off the bank. And then if we have an excess of what's in the contract, then we'll record the day, but not take one from the bank.
Mhm.
And that'll increase the project schedule. And that way we'll be able to show the owner, hey, these are the days that we need to recoup and have a new contractor.
And we'll do that on a different line item.
And yeah, every weather will be, every weather instance will be, or delay will be on a new line item.
Mhm.
Thank
So
you.
every weather day, is you got 5, there's gonna be 5 entries,
Mhm.
and then you're gonna have notes into it.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
if it's a consecutive weather delay.
Can I
then
draw?
you
Can I
can
draw
put
on
it-
this?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Consecutive weather day, then you can put it as one,
Yeah.
5 days
Right,
rain.
and then, but you wanna be able to talk about each day or the length of days in notes. Well, right?
Okay, so here's like construction, and then you have the weather bank. So you're building this in at the end to the baseline, and like here's your substantial completion date. So you're building it at the very end so that you don't lose those days. So then as you use it, so say you're updating, oh, this is like, there. Okay. So say you're, whatever. So say like this is January and you have a weather day here, here, and here. You're actually plugging these in as like delay activities into the schedule. So like you have activity here, weather day, activity, weather day, and then you're taking 3 days off the bank. So now your weather bank is only this long. So these 3 days are gone because now they're here. Does that make sense? Does that help? Okay, awesome. Once we update too, like as we get into the training, I think it'll make a lot more sense. But basically, like it's so important to have this because if you don't build enough and you only have, say you're giving yourself like a 5-day weather bank, well, now you've already lost like all this time. It's already makeup time you're not accounting for. I hope that my little graphic made sense. I hope it helps.
It's already built into the contract schedule.
Mhm. Yes, so basically like this diamond would be like your substantial completion and your baseline. So if you don't have it built in, then you're not accounting for it. So that would be basically saying that like all of your makeup days are going to be a Saturday. It's just like this is just your own buffer so that it's easier for you to make them up. And then once you exceed the 3 days per month, then you let it push. So you let it push your schedule.
Yeah. 7 days in a month. You're
Sure.
only gonna take all 3 of them.
Sure. Right. So yeah, so you'll take off 3 from your bank and then you'll let the rest of them push the schedule out. Because sometimes it's not day for day because like if you encounter over a weekend, it's actually more days for those extra weather days. So like if you push from a Friday to a Sunday or a Friday to a Monday, that's 3 calendar days, but 1 working day. So you would let it push for anything beyond that. Does that make sense? Any other questions on that? Okay, sometimes a weather contract too will specify differently. So your contract obviously like is first priority and then you go from there. So, all right. Same thing with how to show delays. I feel like that's something that we'll kind of get into later. Is there anything with delays that you guys have questions on right now? Okay. Okay, perfect. Or just like in general, I guess like any, like just general questions for tracking or anything like that.
I have a question, but
Mhm. Sure. Okay, yeah, for sure.
Because there's multiple ways to do
Mhm.
something.
Sure. Okay, perfect. So basically, like for these early questions, I'm going to take notes and write down the stuff that you guys want to go into more detail on, like as that kind of as I ask these questions. You don't have to have the answer now. You can like raise your hand anytime you think of it. I just want to make sure to like just kind of get those early ideas into your head where we can start asking questions as we go. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, perfect. So weather days, if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to ask them, but we'll definitely go through like a simulation of when you encounter the weather days and go through that graphic of like how you would actually put that into the schedule. And I think people I've done updates with, I feel like you guys are, pretty clear on it. So we'll go through like, okay, like, a fake simulation of an update where you encountered these weather days this month. So I'll say, dating them. Do you guys have any other contracts where your weather days are different?
But we have a total today, so.
Okay.
the contract specifies, you have 18 days total,
Okay.
not necessarily per month.
Okay. And then you have to exceed the full 18 before? Okay.
Yep.
What about ones where it says you can't have a bank? Do you have anything like that? Okay. Okay. I see that usually other places, not in Texas where it rains all the time. So,
Seen it, have you ever thought about breaking up on a month?
yes, but then it'll move. So like you can have it allocated per month, where you have like, that this month has a certain number of days. But if you try to put a bank like at the end of each month, it would have to fall on the critical path somewhere. So then it's going to move as your schedule moves. So then like your March 1 may end up being like April 3rd or something as it
Yeah,
pushes.
you could put, instead of one bank at the end, you could put a 6-month thing, put banks at the end.
Yeah.
But what Alexander's saying is if you kind of put that in with the month, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so you could say, March, April, May, June,
Right.
all consecutive at the end,
Yeah.
Hmm.
but,
Yeah. Yeah. Like you could have this weather bank at the end could be per month, but then it still is all going to be at the end, or else it's going to just move around on you. I've had people want that before, like owners want to see it, and it just doesn't really work. And if you have multiple turnovers, then really you would split your bank. So say you had a turnover that was like halfway through the project, you would have half of a bank there and then the full bank at the end as well, so that you're not cutting yourself short on that time. And then showing delays, what kind of delays would you guys like to see shown or like to learn about? Like anything in particular? Like any examples?
There are 2 standard examples, which is the design delay,
Sure.
and number 2 going to be the materials delay.
Okay. Okay.
Really, the topic is what's changing.
Sure.
The
Sure.
delay- The delay is the delay. It's the
Sure.
topic.
So design delay, permits, and then material delays. And then material delays that I guess that would be dependent on your contract for if you can claim it or not, or whose responsibility it is, but we can, I mean, you show it the same way. So I think that's a big misperception is people don't want to show delays if it's not something you can claim, but you still want to show it because it's someone's fault. I mean, even if it's your own, like even if you track your own delays, like then it's just transparency on the schedule, but you never know which subcontractor you may have to, you know, have a claim against down the road. Hopefully no one, but
But I think
Yeah.
over here, they should understand that it's all of the critical taking as well. But some because we are not turned in time.
That's really still depending on the. Yeah. Well, no, they're still there. But I think we.
Yeah, we just call the critical.
I do see some people plug in all their submittals. I don't think that that's like totally necessary to have a submittal for like paint or, you know, something like that. Yeah, but the long lead items for sure. I mean, anything that's long lead or anything that's, you know, maybe not long lead, but you're starting it early, like, you know, rebar that you need right away, something like that. Importance of reviewing the critical path. So that's kind of the next overview topic. So importance of reviewing your critical path, obviously for delays, you want to know what's critical, but you also want to know what's almost critical. So even though you might have like your switch gear is delayed, that's your critical path, you still want to know what's delaying other activities, because if your subcontracts are written where they have to meet a certain duration, then as soon as they exceed that duration, then they're pushing out the next trade. So even if it's not critical, it's critical to them. So it's always important to review not only the overall critical path, but the critical paths leading up to certain milestones of focus as well. So that's something that we'll go over that as well. But that goes along with managing your float in a project. Are you guys familiar with float on a schedule? Is anyone not familiar? Okay, so basically it's like when you have like a critical path method, CPM scheduling is what they call it, but it calculates the float, so how critical something is. So then you know, so maybe you have 15 days for electrical underground, 10 days for plumbing underground. They both lead up to, you know, your inspection and then pouring concrete. So then your plumbing would have 5 days of float if electrical's 10 days and if they're at the same time. So your float's just calculating how much time it can slip before it's going to push the end date of the project. And then you can also have free float, which, does anyone know what free float is? So free float is how much time you have, how many days of float before they push the next activity. So it may not be critical, but it's before they push the next trade or the next activity. So if you have a concrete pour that's not critical at all because it's somewhere else, and you have the 10 days and 5 days, plumbing has 5 days of free float, even though the whole chain may have 100 days of float. So it's 5 days before it's going to push the next activity. So free float on your critical path, everything will have 0 float and 0 free float. And on things that are not critical, you're still going to have 0 free float on a lot of stuff. So that's usually the float, the overall total float is between the contractor and the owner typically. And free float would be the contractor and the subcontractors, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Is that too much? Okay. I mean, I know it's like a lot of information all at the front. So if I'm going too fast or anything, just let me know. Okay, sounds good. That's my #1 comment is I talk too fast. So I just want to make sure to fit everything in. So managing your float in your schedule. So it's so important overall to do from the baseline to manage your float, because that's how you're going to calculate everything as far as how critical it is. It's also how you're going to set yourself up to be able to claim time for anything. So if your float isn't set up from the beginning, if you think that something has too high of float, then you're not going to be able to necessarily claim that delay later, because you'll have to manipulate your schedule to show that delay. So we'll get into that too as well once we're actually building the schedule out. But basically, if you feel like you're running through the schedule and checking your baseline and there's something that has 50 days of float, but you feel like really it should be a lot less than that, those are the kind of things that we want to check as we go. So from that kind of high level, is there anything that you guys have that you want to focus more on, or any topics that you've encountered with float that you'd like to go into detail on?
If you can touch base on the very critical fact.
Sure.
Which is a critical fact, like 2 days.
Sure, sure.
I mean, they call it very critical fact, but 2 days is not a big. It could,
Right.
Second could turn to be a.
Sure. Okay, so we'll go over the near critical, and then we'll go over that as well. Like once we're actually building out the schedule, we'll show how you can see if something's too high of float, and we'll see like how you can kind of identify that. it's one of those things that's usually skipped a lot at the beginning. Like people don't want to go over it. They just want to be done with their schedule and just move on. But it is one of those things that it is super important, because if you don't go through your critical path on your baseline, if you don't go through and take the steps to maintain your float and make sure everything looks accurate, then you're just going to maybe hurt yourself in a claim later. So if you have a design change that you know is critical, but based on your schedule, it's not pushing anything out, then you have to actually manipulate your schedule to make it show, and that just makes it less credible. Oh, sure. Sure. So when you first get your project, you're going to set up your baseline schedule, which sometimes you might have like a preliminary baseline and then a detailed baseline, depending on like what phase of design you're in. So the detailed baseline would be like you have 100% drawings and you're building out the schedule with the detail where no activities more than 15 days is usually the base point of what you want to have detail for. And this would be the one that you have like in your subcontract if that's not set up yet. So it would be every activity would just have one trade on it so that you can track that separately. So the MEPs, then which MEP, which one is allotted to how many duration of days and that sort of thing. But basically, once you set all of that up, you have all the scope included in your schedule. That would be your detailed baseline overall, and that's the baseline for the project. So that's what you measure back to for everything for the contract. So that would be like the measuring point for, okay, if the subcontracts are set up based on duration, that's what you would compare their durations to. And for the owner, that's what you would compare to for, okay, is this critical? Is this becoming critical? And what's your finish date that you have to meet overall? Your finish date can change if you get a change order, but that would just be your initial perfect world plan where nothing's delayed, everything's on time, and everything goes as planned. So that's why we do set up a weather bank in that, so that you don't lose that time as soon as you encounter your first weather day. Does that make sense?
Just one question.
Mm-hmm.
Management over here, we don't build the schedule from, let's say, the first week of the project to be 100% working. We follow the rolling weather plan, which means that our superintendent is breaking for 4 to 6 weeks look ahead, and the third year we plug the breakdown on the activity.
Sure.
So does that affect the baseline? But the way I understand you saying that the entire schedule is broken down to the smallest detail that we can. You don't start.
Sure. So that would be dependent on your contract. Some contracts require it to be done at the beginning for all that detail. If you don't, and if you're, like the best practice would be for all of that to be broken out at the beginning. But if you don't, sometimes you don't know what the design is going to be because it's not finalized. That's where you would have like a chunk of time that you then replace later. It just has to fit within that chunk of time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, this is
okay. Yeah.
Like election 6 weeks.
Sure. Yeah, like ideally you'd have that all broken out into the details, but if you can't yet, then you can't. It is what it is. Any other questions like that?
Let me ask you about the float real fast.
Sure.
So, say we're at the slabs, electric's in,
Mm-hmm.
they had 2 days, they hit their dates. The rough, which they got it done 2 days quicker than what's shown on the schedule.
Yeah.
If you go in there and show that they're 2 days quicker, does that run through the whole schedule and move everything up 2 days?
It would, yeah.
Is there any way around that?
No, not really. No, because they should be the next day.
I just want myself 2 days that just took from it.
Well,
You add it at the end.
yeah.
Increase your permit, your inspections or something. But you don't necessarily want to show your owner immediately, hey,
Right.
we just made up 2 days.
Right, in phase one.
Mhm.
But you want your next subcontractors to understand, hey, we don't need you 2 days later. We need
Right.
you actually Monday. You know?
Mhm.
So you want to show that.
I want to show some people. I want
Well,
to show everybody.
you want to show, no, I would say you want to show everybody, but you just tack it on at the end to a task that, or you're trying to.
To
store
keep
up
the
your-
date, to keep the original agreed upon date
Correct.
here.
Mhm.
Because dealing with RPG,
Yeah.
we show them any date, they're on. That's my new date. And I say, no.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, I just bought myself a week and you just took it from me.
Yeah, that's them trying to take the float. Yeah, because normally the project owns the float. I don't know if you have contracts where it's different than that, but typically, like 9 times out of 10, the project owns the float, so they can't take it from you if you're early. They might try. They might try to take it, but that's where you would add yourself, like with the weather bank, you would add like final clean, final punch, contractor punch, like just random stuff that you do change. Mhm.
Once he claim anything after,
Sure, they expect you to finish
yeah,
early.
yeah, you make it 2 days, so you claim right now it has to be.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure,
RTG is really good at doing
sure. Yeah, so in that case, you would let the schedule draw back so that, you know, your trades come on time so that everything's good there. But then you would add just like your contingency at the end, once you're done with the update, just add 2 more days to it. And usually I like to have like a few long activities that you overlap and you kind of like change the overlap so that it's like, because they'll catch it if you change the duration, but a lot of, so it's kind of sneaky, but I'm not recommending that, but that's sometimes what I do. Right.
Especially in the SFR world.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah. So in that case, I would have like activities that you're doing a little bit less overlap and changing that back and forth. So that, yeah, but you won't say you heard it from me, but yes. Yeah, that's what I would do in that case. Because you do want to have your actual construction activities, not just show a gap. You want to, you know, actually project what's happening. Any float clauses or weather clauses you've encountered that you have questions on or like to go over? Anything that's like out of the ordinary? Have you guys looked at your float clauses in the contract?
No.
Nothing there. Okay. Sounds good. All right. And then scheduling standards, that's the last topic that I had for just this overview before we actually go into the software. Scheduling standards. So there's a few different, like, there's one called DCMA, and that's like a scheduling standard people may reference. There's one called AACE. Those are kind of the 2 common ones that you might hear owners talk about. But those are basically just saying like, these are guidelines that you're supposed to follow for best practices. The scheduling standards that you follow are going to be first based on your contract for what your contract says. So if you do have a scheduling specs section of your contract, you would reference that. But that would be things where it's like determining the longest duration that you can have, or it's determining like certain milestones that you have to include, or something like that. You have a
Here,
question?
sorry, what was
DCMA is like a non-biased. It's just saying like, oh, an open
Yeah,
finish
okay,
is
got it.
this. Yeah. And then AACE is the other one. And that has a lot of standards for opinions on like delays and stuff. But those are the 2 that I've seen referenced in specs as well. But you may hear an owner bring it up. I'm not saying you have to memorize that or anything, but if you do hear that reference, that's what those are. So basically your contract, whatever your contract says for specifications will be usually the most strict to follow, but then anything that you have internally that is a guideline you follow, you'll do that as well. So that would be saying like, oh, like only 1 trade per activity or maximum duration of this, or maybe a minimum duration. I've seen minimum durations as well so that people don't break out like every electrical panel or something like that. I've seen a lot of like 1-day activities that really just don't need to be all broken out individually. So those are kind of scheduling standards that you might encounter or hear about. Do you have any questions on that or anything that you typically will try to follow from that standpoint? Okay. Usually it's more with like government contracts are the ones that usually are stricter. Yeah. So yeah, government's the one that's strict to deal with. Otherwise, it's usually pretty relaxed. All right. Any other questions of things that you would like to go over or things that are, you know, how you would reflect something in a schedule that you'd like to touch on before we get into it?
I think that,
Sure.
yeah, I think that,
Sure.
there's so many different scenarios. I mean,
Sure. Sure.
But let me ask you one question. This is
Mhm.
like 101 stuff.
Sure.
So all of us, when we go, we're gonna build us a schedule out of Microsoft
Mhm.
Project. What do we see when we open it up? Do we
Sure.
see nothing and we just start building it?
Sure. So we can go through both. We can go through when you open the template from scratch. We can also go through how you would build it out yourself as well. Do you have a preference? We were going to just like go through opening the template and starting from there. But we can also go through just like the settings that you would see. But if you open a project from scratch, it'll look like this. Which, have you guys seen this? It just looks like a blank Excel. So this is what you'll see if you do start it from scratch. I'll kind of run through like, I'll show you guys the toolbars and everything and like what you would see on here. But then do you guys have the template, or I can email it, or or do they have the template?
They don't.
Okay,
You can email it to me.
sure. Yeah, well,
If you're going, if you stick, and
Mhm.
SFR, if I go from this job to this job, I can just copy paste and then straighten out from there,
Mhm.
because the activities are gonna be basically the same.
right. Yeah, you can. There are a few things that you'll want to check when you do that. But yes, you can copy and paste. There are risks to it. So basically, if you start a project from scratch, it's saying that the project right now, if I go to, I'm just going to show you in the project tab, this is where you'd find information. I'm going to go through all the toolbars, but it's saying that your start date's today. This is what you're going to encounter as a problem if you do that. Is your start date is going to be way in the past, and so you might have some calculation errors. But when you use the template and you don't have all the constraints and everything in there, then you can just push out your start date and you're good from there. But you could do that on another project you have as well. Okay, let me save the template. Okay, and then I think I can just put it in the Teams for you to get it.
Put it there now.
Okay.
She's so bad.
Sorry.
Still going.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Search for us, okay, fine.
I'll go slower when you guys are following along. Don't worry. All right. Okay, so I sent that over. So when you guys get that, open it, and then we'll all start from the beginning. Because while I go through the toolbars, I'd like for you guys to see it on your screen too. Also, do you guys have Microsoft Project open on your computers?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
I don't know.
gonna just look and see which one you guys have. There's 2 different versions.
13.
Okay. Does anybody have, okay, like his is the older one with the green on the top.
Jeff told me that everybody's on 13.
Okay. Has yours been on your iPad for a while? Okay. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. If you do have the green on the top, some of your icons for your buttons are just going to look a little different. Is all. All the options are still there. It's just like a different little icon picture for it. Okay, perfect.
Through our regular email?
Okay.
That's like grass-fed beef.
I'll figure out how he got.
You open it in the email.
Oh, okay.
Mine didn't do that.
You're like, man, these guys are remedial.
No, that's okay.
Thank you, Brian.
No, now we're actually getting into, so basically like the first part, I know it's like a bunch of gibberish when I just talk about it, but basically the first part are just like ideas of what to think of when you're actually building out your schedule. So it's just like things to think about. And if you haven't, most people like have not thought about it from that angle before. You just think about it from like, planning and scheduling people, but you do want that. You just also have to utilize it as protection against whoever you may need to file a claim against later. I do lots of claims. I think they're kind of fun.
All the scenarios.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody have it yet on their computer? You guys do? Okay, who has it open? You guys raise your hand. Has anybody ever worked in a different scheduling software? Okay. Okay.
But it's Oracle, that's what it is. Oracle bought P6.
What was that? Sorry.
Oracle bought
Oh yeah,
P6.
yeah, they did. Yeah, Oracle's great. No, Oracle is difficult to work with. P6, I mean, P6 is great for certain things. But I prefer using Microsoft Project because it's a lot more user friendly and I can actually like send the file to people and they can actually use it to their benefit. Whereas with P6, it can do great things with the resources and stuff, but it's not as user friendly to just like pick up and use.
Here we go, they go on my computer.
I've been wanting to know, can you show me?
I never can't find it.
Okay.
That's why it's all gibberish, 'cause it doesn't.
Cause they did that last time, I didn't have Microsoft Project on here, so. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to see kind of where you guys are.
I don't know why it's coming up through your internet, not through the.
Oh, yeah. It's on your browser. Do you have the desktop version on your computer
Yes.
installed? Yeah, it should come up on that.
Trying to open it through.
This is opening.
Come on, Fred.
Oh.
Is anybody else?
I'm still on.
What's that?
Oh, it's got a-
Yeah, I got Project on there.
Come on, Austin.
It should, if you have it downloaded, it should just open it.
It's coming out like it was when I didn't have Microsoft Project.
This one.
Saving it. Thank you very much.
All right.
$3. That was pretty easy.
All right. So you guys got it all sorted out?
No. Yeah, I can't get it again. I was, but I don't even know if you knew it. Save it. That way I can find it again.
Okay.
Right. And then hit the Zoom, I heard you say.
All right. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Everyone good? Okay, perfect. Okay, so now that we've kind of done an overview on what you're looking for in the schedule, now we'll go through all the steps to actually build one out. So with every new project, you'll start with this template. So you guys all have the template open, right? So now we'll run through again, like the actual outline structure of it. So can everybody see, it says Ridgemont project template, then it says milestones. You have contract milestones and project. So this is where if you have additional project milestones that you want to track, so then that's where you would put these in. Or you could even add a section for owner milestones if they wanted to have their own separately. But you'll put that under this milestone section. And then you'll see that the push pin here means that it is manually scheduled. So when you're done with your schedule, you want everything to have, you want no push pins. You want everything to be auto scheduled. But basically the push pins are just there so that once you input your information and tie everything in, then everything will be auto scheduled from there. So that's kind of how you can know what portions you've already done and what portions you haven't, is if you can skim through and you have no more push pins and everything has dates, then that's, you know, the section that you're done with. So if you still have the push pins, you still have to visit that section and build that out. So that's kind of just like a intro as you open it up. Any questions on the milestones? Okay. So then the next section's pre-construction. So programming, design, permitting. You may have a project where you want each of those to be their own heading. You may have a project where you don't need that at all. But that's the placeholder for all of those activities. Submittals, we kind of touched on this earlier, but this is where you'll track the submittals that you have for your project. You can add more. You can take away the ones that don't apply. These are just a guide.
So if it's something that's not in our contract,
Mhm.
like permitting,
Sure.
you just, well.
Just delete it. If it
don't put
doesn't,
any dates in.
like if it doesn't apply to your scope, it's not within your scope, just delete just delete it. Yeah. Yeah, these are just like a reference for things to think about if you do have it. And then franchise utilities, same thing here. I mean, they're just a placeholder for what you do have. So so say that you don't have the communication and phone, but you have something else. So then you would just change the name of it to the one that you do have. Okay, and then for construction, there's a pre-construction item and mobilization. This is your site setup type stuff. Then there's the placeholder for site. I mean, you guys can see through the activities in here. It's pretty basic. These are all just placeholders where you'll fill these in with your own actual activities that you have. So you'll fill in with more details. So we have the site work. Then we have your building work. So the building work, this is for, you have your grading for the foundations. This also has a few different structures in it. So only one of these would apply to you, most likely. So you would just delete the ones that don't. So say that you have a CMU building, then you'll delete the other types of structures. These are just here for like a reference point.
Is there a correct way to delete that?
Yes. So when you delete it, you'll collapse the section. So you see the little arrow. So say that you don't have a tilt tab. So click the arrow for tilt wall and it collapses it. Then you can actually click this whole row number 79 and right click it and delete.
Calculate that.
Yeah, so that'll just be gone. Mhm. So you can also just click on the activity itself and delete it. When you collapse the summary headings, this is with copying and pasting too. It's better when you delete, like it functions better. But when you're using like the copy and paste functions, it's better to collapse the heading before you copy and paste, because there can be issues where the logic will actually try to like move on you. Deleting is not as risky because you're deleting it. But when you copy and paste, it's always better to collapse the grouping first, just because it can have errors. Sometimes it doesn't have an error, but sometimes it changes all the logic to tie to something else. So just to be safe, it's always better to collapse it first. But that's how you would delete a section if you didn't have it. So say we do have CMU, then we would collapse this one as well for the pre-engineered and delete that. So collapsed it, and the row number will select everything in the row. If you hit the delete key on a certain cell, it may just delete the text. So I just did it there and it just deleted text. So that's why you would want to delete the entire row. Delete task.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then I'm going to collapse this heading. If you collapse the heading and delete that, it's going to delete everything underneath it, which is what it's saying. Continue, delete this and its subtasks. So that's how you can modify the template as you're going through. All right, then you have your exterior. This again, you can add subgroupings underneath it. So say that you have the exterior, but you really want to break out the roofing, the storefront, and your facade or something like that. So you can add those subheadings underneath as you're building out and detailing out from this template. Same with the interior finishes. You can break out restrooms or you can break out different areas based on what you do want to track and what you do have. And then there's a placeholder at the end for final inspections. So any questions on the way that this is set up? Any questions on what you would fill in these areas?
So
Go ahead.
would you recommend going through and putting all your tasks in work? And
Mhm.
then putting in durations and logic, or would you do that as you're going?
I think it just depends on what you're prepared for at the time. Like if you're doing it section by section, then you could just do that section, add in all your tasks, put your durations in, tie it in. So say that like you've studied the site work on your plans, you want to just do site work and then come back to the building later, you could do that. But if you're ready, then you can break everything out. I don't feel like there's an order that's better than another.
The milestones that are involved,
Mhm.
is there a special way to do those? Is it, or just like any other line item?
So this is actually going to act as like an overview. So once I change stuff underneath it, it's going to change the summary.
But how do you create a new milestone? Because
Oh, a new summary, like or like the final
it's just like
inspections.
Inspection. And
Sure.
If I want to create another one, like,
Sure.
right away work,
Okay.
for example.
Sure. So say you wanted, you can type in the bottom to add. So I'm going to say right of way work. And then here's the actual work underneath it. So then you would actually just go to the task ribbons. So then we'll go into the ribbons after this too. But you would actually just indent the one underneath it, and that turns it into a summary. Does that make sense? So you just like move them back and forth, and that's how you can modify it. The colors do have to be done manually, but it just makes it easier to read as you're going if you do have the colors in there.
I do a sub-head, say for instance, your overhead roof.
Mhm.
Have a certain area, like a showroom area. that you
Sure.
want to- How do you break that down into different
Sure.
areas?
So if you had, so say your interior finishes, you wanted to make this multiple areas for that, you could put an item above the first one. So you could just add a task. We'll go through the different like buttons for different ways to add a task and stuff like that. But you could add a task and actually just indent everything underneath it. So say that this is like back of house or something.
You
Mhm.
were saying, okay, OPP rough. Yeah, so you'd make that the parent task, so you'd add a task below it. And
Mhm.
and then it would pull everything off,
Mhm.
where she added the task above it, which you paid
Mhm.
everything below it, so.
Yeah, you could do the other way around. You could say, add a task below it, and then you can just indent this.
So you didn't.
Yeah.
You know, okay.
Mhm.
That's where I-
Yeah.
So if you have 391 buildings,
Mhm.
You got a big schedule.
Sure. So if you have,
you're gonna do that for everyone and then indent them and put that address?
so you could indent the whole area, and you could say, like if we had this as back of house, then you can collapse this, and then you can actually just copy and paste and say, okay, now this is, this is sales.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that sort of thing. Yeah, we'll go over the different buttons for everything like that. Mhm. Yeah. No, you can indent it back to the left. So you could say, but then it's gonna put it one heading back. Yeah. Yeah. And as we go through too, do I do this? I'll do it in this class too. We'll do it both times because it's one I like to repeat. But there's a really easy way to like check your work with the levels, where you can make sure everything's at the same level or at the level that you intend it to be at. So first we'll go over kind of like the different menus and the toolbars. So the first one is the file. So this is where if you have a different one, I think it's only yours, but it would be green. Does anyone have green on the side here? Okay, you have green, you have green. Okay. Do you see the options button at the bottom if you have green? You do? Okay. So all I did was I just hit the file tab. Okay, so you guys all have green. So am I the only one that doesn't have green?
No,
You have that color? Okay. So the people that have green, your icons just might have like a different picture on some of them. That's the only thing that'll be different. It might just be like a different type of picture for the things that we reference as we go for the icons. Yeah. Yes, if your sidebar is solid green right here instead of a gray color.
What does it mean?
Yeah. It just means you have a different version than I have. So when I reference the icons, your icon might be the same like a filter, but maybe looks a little bit different than my filter. That's all it'll be. Okay. So first we'll go over all the things that you access in the file ribbon. So if you go to file, then this is where you open a new project. This is where you can have a new project. You could open a project. You have info. This is where you can save. It does not auto save. So make sure that you save your project. You also cannot have it open at the same time as somebody else. So if you're accessing it through your server and you have a file open and someone else does too, someone's is going to get deleted. So just be cautious of that when you have the files open because someone's is getting overridden by, and I don't know how it determines whose it's overriding, but you just can't have the same exact file from like a shared drive open at the same time.
It doesn't tell you, like if I go to open it, it won't say that Craig's in it.
No, it won't. That's it. Yeah. So we've discovered that the hard way in our office where I closed my computer, then all of a sudden it was just wiped out. So yeah, so just be mindful of that. Usually I'll make a copy of the project in the file folder. So like in the File Explorer, before you even open it, you know how you can like right click on something and copy and paste it? So do that before you open it and then change the name to like your initials or something if there is a risk that someone else is in it at the same time, which you kind of don't want to do that. You want to work on it one at a time because you want that person's changes to be incorporated in yours as well. So I don't know how often you will have that situation. Okay. Okay, good, good. So then, yeah, hopefully you want to counter that. But when you do save, yeah. So when you,
Here I'm going.
okay. So when you do save it, just be mindful of that. And also at the same time, before you do a schedule update, you want to make a copy before, because when you have a delay and you have to prove a delay claim, you have to use the file just prior to the delay, which could be any week. So you don't know when that's going to be. So you have to save all of your weekly updates as their own file in case you have to use that later for a delay claim.
Yeah, we're just not ignorant
Mhm.
of this, so when you save, it's just the date that you saved it. for 1 week.
Yeah. Yeah. So say that you have your weekly updates on a Monday or something. So then you would say like schedule update this date, and then, then the name of the project. Then before you open it for next week's update, you'll make a copy in your file folder, paste it, change it to today's date, and then open that new file.
Show us how to do that.
Sure. So if you had, so let me, I'll go to the desktop where it was. So this is the one that I'd sent out. So if I right click on it and then copy, and then I'm going to right click and paste. So now I just made the copy of it. And then I could say, 6/7/24 schedule update. And then I open the file. So you want to do that before so you don't accidentally flip your names. Because if you have it open once it's already like, if you do save as, then you may actually like flip it for the file that you're updating just by accident.
The idea of putting the initial, especially if
Mhm.
the general super.
Sure.
So something and update.
Sure.
The initial, so we can know who did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So just something to be mindful of. And at the same time, if you do have, so say you make your baseline file, you don't want to update that same file. You want to make a copy of it so that you still have your baseline. And then you never touch it. You never change it. Because otherwise you just like overwrote history of that file. So that's just why it's so important to make a copy first. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So you can never go back if you override it. Yeah. So just something to be mindful of, but all of that is in the file tab, in the file ribbon. So this is where you save, print. So the first one that we'll go into, so click on your file ribbon and then click on info. So this is where you'll see an overview of your actual project info. Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So here for the start date, do you see how on the template, the start date is 6/1? So this is where you would modify it to be the start date of your actual project. This is one way. You can access it a few different ways, but this is one way where you can actually go file info and you can actually change. So say that your project start date is Monday 6/3, you could change that to 6/3. Mhm.
So, are you distributing this over?
Yeah, take it. Yeah.
Okay.
We are recording it.
Mhm. I can send over, I do have like screenshots of stuff that I can send over, but it's not as detailed if you took your own. Yeah. All right. So any questions on that? Because this is important. This is a step. I'll make a list too of like the steps that you'll go through with the template. But so what you'll do first is you'll go to the info and then change it to your project start date. Also change the title to be your project. But okay, start date.
Can we do that with this?
You can, yeah.
Okay.
So then any other questions here? So the project calendar standard, you'll leave it at standard. Standard would be like your 5-day work week. You don't want to make it a 6-day unless your contract is a 6-day, because then you lose your makeup day if you plan it, if you plan it in the file. So you would leave that a 5-day unless your contract's different. The schedule from start. So schedule from start is saying that every time you add a new activity, it's going to default fall on the start date. I like to keep it that way because then it's like a red flag right away that something needs to be tied in. The other option would be to schedule from the current date if you add a new activity. I don't like to do that. It makes it too easy to forget to tie it in. makes it too easy to like lose that tie. So that's just kind of what this is representing here. Any questions on this project information graphic?
You go to project information, click
Yep.
on that.
This, yeah.
It says advanced and
Mhm.
project statistics.
Mhm.
Does that mean anything?
Yeah, so the advanced, so the next one that, so to change your actual project title, so now click on project information and then click on advanced properties. So you can hover over it and you can actually click on it. Does everybody see that? Okay. So click on project information and actually select advanced properties. Okay. Okay. So do you guys see, I'll do that one more time. So if you're in the main screen of the project, go to File, and then go to Info, and then Project Information, Advanced Properties. Okay, so here, the first thing that you'll see is the title is RCC Schedule Template. So this is where you'll change your title. I'm going to say Training Session 1 Project. So this is the name. So it's not going to say baseline or anything like that, because this is going to be the title for the whole project, or for the whole, duration of the project. So if you were to run this through like a third party analyzer, or if the owner was, this is the title that's going to pop up. Just for a reference point there, if they do bring up like any of those analyzers.
What about the rest of the things like do we need to maybe make
I think that would be more your own discretion. If you do, you don't have to. I do like to see who the original author was. Sometimes if you are having, because sometimes the file itself will have like something weird on it. If you create the baseline, go ahead and make the author yourself, because you're the one that created it. But if you did take a file and you inherited it from somebody else, and there is a weird setting that you can't figure out why it's doing something, you can check the author and see if that person knows, if they still work there. So that is like a good reference point to see, okay, who created this? Like maybe they know why something is acting strange.
and what do you think
I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. I will look into that and see.
Let's run through the title of the subject.
Sure. Sure. So title, that's just going to be the title of your actual project. So whatever the name is, like on your contract for the project, that's the title. Subject, you don't need to fill that in. Author, you'll make it yourself if you're creating the baseline. The manager company, really, like if you're not worried about tracking this stuff, don't worry about it. You can just leave it blank. Usually the only ones that are filled in are the title and the author. General is going to have just like information about, see, like created this day, modified this day, last accessed. This is just information that's like from a technical file standpoint, like a Microsoft file. It says where I have it saved and the location. Statistics is going to tell you the same type of, I mean, this is all like, Microsoft based information about where the file's saved. Contents, this is going to show you, so scheduled duration, it's going to show you what your overall duration is. It'll show you the start and finish. This is an overview of what you see here. It's also showing you the work. Work means like resources. So if you have like man hours loaded into here, it's going to tell you what your total man hours are. And if it's cost loaded, it's going to tell you what your total cost is. So this is just an overview of the totals of everything that's actually within this file. And then percent complete is your overall based on duration of the project. It's going to be your percent complete. And then work percent complete, that is based on your man hours. If you do have resource loading, which usually we won't get into that in Microsoft Project, because typically if resource loading is required, it's going to be in P6. So that's not something that we get into much with this. There are ways to do it if you guys want to learn that, but it's not common in Microsoft Project. All right. Any questions? Any questions on this overview?
That was awesome.
All right. Thanks.
back to the project?
Okay. That's just saying like how many levels you can have. It's just like the default of how big the project can be. Yeah, you'll just leave it. Priority can either be like how many line items for natural order, or this is like not it can grow, it can get bigger, because there's schedules that can have like huge, 3,000 activities. But when it references priority, it's referencing like your natural order in the project. So like order that you're adding the activities in. I'm not sure. I haven't actually like checked to see how it changes. I would imagine that in a bigger project, the priority is going to go up, but it's probably just telling you what you have within the file.
So when you're building the project, if you go over that priority of 500,
Mhm.
you have to go in here to increase it.
No, it should increase on its own. Yeah. Sometimes people will reference priority for like the levels that you have in your outline structure. But again, like the project information will modify with your project. So like if your finish date pushes out, you don't have to change this. It's going to change it for you. Any other questions on the info right here? Okay. So now let's go down to the options down here at the bottom. So do you guys all see this options? And you should get this pop-up window that comes up for project options. Does anybody not see this? So you don't have pop-ups? Okay. So the first thing is the general ribbon. So we'll kind of like run through these on the left-hand side for the different ribbons. So this general ribbon, what you'll see here is the default view when you actually open your project. So here it says Gantt with timeline. That means that here we're seeing this Gantt chart in the background with the timeline up here. That's just saying what the default is in this file itself. You don't need to change that because as soon as you change anything on your view and save, it's going to save that way. So you don't need to worry about any of that stuff. The date format, a lot of times when you're backdating a schedule, so say that you're using the schedule template that had a date of 6/1, but you actually wanted to draw it back to be like April 1st or something. A lot of times, for some reason, it backdates it to 8 p.m. So I don't know why it does that, but if you think that there's something wrong with your times, normally the way that you would identify that is if there's a one-day activity and it's starting on a certain date and finishing on another date, but the duration's 1 day. So say that it was like starting on the 6th, finishing on the 7th with a duration of a day, that's a red flag that your times are off in your file. So if you think that your times are off, then you can go to your project options right here and you can actually change this to show the time. And this is when I click OK. So like this says Monday 6/3 right here. I'm pointing to it, but right here. When I say OK and show my time, it says 6/3 at 1 p.m. So here I know right away that my time is off. So that's how you can check that and you can tell if something seems off on your file. And then it's easy to just go options and then you can turn it off by choosing whichever way you'd like the date to read. So I'll do that one more time. So in your file, I have it open here. And I'm going to go to File and then very bottom Options. And then here's my project options. And then it's under the date format in this general tab. And this is where you can change the way that your date reads. All right. Any questions on this? This is the main feature that you'll use on this first general tab. Okay, so then the next one is display. So this is going to show how many decimal digits you show if you do have a cost in here. The main thing in this display bar that people change is the entry bar. So entry bar should be checked on yours. Does everyone see it checked? Entry bar. So that is this right here. So it's like a So some people like to have it up there because it's otherwise you have to kind of like click and hold on a line to get the text to pop up. If you have the entry bar, then you can actually just click on this longer task and then just type up here to change it. So that's what that entry bar means.
Everything is different than us. Show those elements you have to have
Oh, really?
option. I think.
Online status next
Yes,
to
that
name.
is next
You guys
to-
don't have that?
No.
Okay.
We do have entry bar.
Okay.
It was not checked.
Okay.
Mine was-
Oh, it was not. Okay.
Yeah, well,
Okay. So the entry bar, this is going to carry over. So some of these are going to carry over with the schedule file itself. So like currency options for this project, do you see how it says RCC schedule template next to it? So if you click the drop down, all my schedules that I have open are showing. And then under show these elements, there is no schedule next to it. So this is going to be for my actual like administrator for my Microsoft project on my computer. So some of these options you'll see that are like, these are going to be specific to the project here because they're underneath that. But then in the general, this is the specific to, like, none of these have your project at the top. So all of this is just going to be your own software on your computer. Okay, any questions on the display? Okay, so now we'll go to schedule. So this is the most important one for actually setting up your project options. If you do have any existing schedules that you're working on, I would recommend going through the project options and actually like verifying everything and checking it. So again, the drop down is going to be here for everything. You can also do for all new projects. I wouldn't worry about that since you'll be using the schedule template. So week start on, I actually like to make my week start on a Monday. That's just my preference because the work week starts Monday. So I like it when my calendar is showing that way. So like my 3-week look ahead has the line for the week on a Monday. That's just my own preference. I think it makes more sense. But I mean, whatever you guys want. I am going to change mine to Monday though. So if you leave yours on Sunday, you'll just see a little bit of variances with how it's looking when we view the calendar and stuff. And then fiscal year starts in January. So the default start time and end time, I always leave this at 8 to 5 and don't change it. I know a lot of times you will work different hours, but if you mess with these, it's going to mess with a lot of background calculations in the software. So I don't recommend it. I would leave these all as is because if you modify it, you have to change it in like 3 or 4 different places for it to actually work. And it just makes it a lot easier to mess up your file. So leave the default start and end times as is, leave the 8 hours a day as is. There's other ways that you can modify things without changing this. The show schedule messages, this is when you'll get like the pop-up windows that give you information. I like to leave it on because when Microsoft Project like auto updates. So you'll have sometimes like you'll have a week where you open it up and something weird is happening. It's because it auto updated. But if you have your schedule messages on, it will tell you things that are different. So I like to leave that on because it's just going to give you more information about your schedule. Same thing with down here, show schedule warnings. Same thing. I like to have these, they'll go away. The schedule messages are like a little pop-up windows with information. The schedule warnings are like the caution sign that pops up sometimes. And then show assignment unit, this is for resources. So don't worry about that. And then new task created, it should say auto scheduled. You guys see that? Okay, that's what we want. So manually scheduled is the push pin. We don't want the push pin because then it's not using your logic. It's basically just turning it into a spreadsheet. So we want the logic to be able to calculate and we want a float value. If you have the push pin, you don't have a float value with that activity. So it's not beneficial to have. So new projects or new scheduled tasks, auto scheduled. That's also how you can decipher if you've already gone through the template and modified that because those will all be gone once you're done. Duration is entered in days, leave the days, the work is a resource. So this would say like man hours is your default. And then default task type, this is also resource driven. So you don't need to worry about that. Auto scheduled tasks are scheduled on. This is when you insert a new task, kind of what we were talking about before. They can either start on the project start date or the current date, but go ahead and leave it as a new task as the project start date because then you know you have to tie it in and you have to tie it in to get it away from that date. If you have a new task on the current date, then it's really easy to forget to tie it in because it's already falling where you want it to. And then down here, the tasks will always honor constraint dates. Uncheck that. So if you say that tasks will always honor constraint dates, it won't actually let your constraint show behind. So if you're behind schedule, it won't actually push that activity that's constrained. So uncheck that. Once you uncheck this, you don't have to uncheck it again and it should stay. But you do have to uncheck it per project. So this is specific to this project, but uncheck it and you're good to go. The last section here, or I guess there's two sections, but we won't worry about the bottom because it's resource options. So calculate project after each edit. You want to keep that on so that means that every time you make a change, the change is going to schedule and show what the new dates are going to be. You'll see that everything starts shading blue. So you'll see everything shaded blue in the cells that changed when this is on. Any questions on the schedule project options? The only modifications that we made were to have the week start on Monday, and that's preferential. And then to uncheck tasks will always honor constraint date. So any questions there? Any other questions on these options that you're seeing? Okay. Awesome. So then the only other one here is the advanced ribbon. So the proofing, this is all like spell check and stuff like that. This is another way that you can save it. You can change the language. But the advanced tab is the only other ones that are really like options for your project you may look at. So here, and this is a question that I'll get sometimes. So down here, it says calculate tasks are critical if Slack. So float is called Slack in Microsoft Project. So Slack means the float. So tasks are critical if Slack is less than or equal to 0 days. That means that when you activate your critical path and you show it as red, everything that has a Slack 0 or less days is going to be red. If you wanted to show everything that's maybe 10 days or less a float to be critical, you could change this. And so it's changing the definition of critical in your project. It won't mean that you can claim time for that, but if you wanted more things to print out as red for any reason, that's where you could change that. But this is just changing the definition of like the built-in filter for critical. This is where it's saying, okay, when you select the built-in filter for critical, we're defining that a critical task is less than or equal to 0 days. Any questions on that? All right, awesome. So those are the options that are in the file ribbon. Any questions on anything that we looked at here?
One question on the autosave.
Sure.
Options. So,
Sure.
Someone was asking me that they turned off the autosave,
Mhm.
but every time they hit reset, is this something that's project on the file level or on the?
I think it's program level. And the autosave will make like a pop-up window come up every 10 minutes and ask you if you want to save it. Yeah. So I like just hit Control S like every 2 seconds when I'm doing stuff just to save it. But I just don't like the pop-up window. I feel like it's distracting, but that's where that's from. And it should be dependent on your actual software on your computer. Any other questions? All right, awesome. So then the task ribbon is the next ribbon. So the task ribbon is going to have everything that is related to the actual tasks on your project. So when I click on construction milestone NTP, this task ribbon is going to give me information about everything that is specific to this one task. So this is going to give me the details of the project. It's going to give me the view. So there's different buttons that are like repeated a few times. So you can change your view here with the Gantt chart in multiple of the ribbons. It's just for convenience. But every other option, so like the text, this is going to be related to this specific task. And then you'll also see the indent and outdent keys here for making something a summary and making it a task again. Here with the chain link, this is the link tool. So this is where you can use the chain button to tie activities together. So again, you have to have an activity selected for it to work. So you would have 2 activities selected to use the chain tool. So say I wanted to tie together submit the steel and then procure steel. I could hit the chain and it's going to link those 2 together.
Gonna be finished to start.
Finish to start. Yeah. So finish to start is the default. And then you can change it from there. If you want to see where you have your details, the details window at the bottom, this is where it's going to look a little bit different on some people's, but I have this icon right here that says details. Yours may not say anything next to it, but does everybody have next to your project information an icon that looks like this or similar? Okay, so click on that and you should get your details to pop up at the bottom. So now if I click on the submit steel that I just tied together, I can see the successor name down at the bottom. So this is one way that you can show your details is by clicking details in your task ribbon. And you can also make a task, turn it into a summary or a milestone from here. So if I click at the top, the construction NTP, and I wanted to turn it into a milestone, I could click, actually that's going to add one, I take that back, but I could add a milestone here and it's going to add a milestone. Another way to change it is to just make the duration 0. That will also turn it into a milestone. Okay, any other questions on the task ribbon? Or any other questions on the concept of this is specific to each individual task, which a task can be a milestone, a summary, or an activity. It just is going to call them all a task. All right, so then the next one's the resource ribbon. This one we're not going to touch on because same reasons as earlier, but this is the resource ribbon. The report ribbon will print out reports that are based on your resources. So we'll skip over this as well, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys do have if you do have something resource loaded that you're curious about. The next big one is the project tab. So the project tab is a lot like the task tab, but the task tab is about an individual task. The project tab is about your project as a whole. So project information is the first big one. So go ahead and click on project information. And you should get your project information pop-up window. You guys see that? Okay, perfect. So this is another place where you can change the start date of your project. You can also change the calendar. That's the default. I don't recommend changing it, but if you needed to, this is where that is. Like if you needed to verify anything, this gives you information about your overall project as a whole under project information. The change working time, this is where you can pop up your calendars. So if you click on change working time, you should see a pop-up that has your standard calendar shown. You guys see that? Okay. And we'll go out and we'll build out the calendars. I think it's in the next class, building out the calendars. But this is where you can add, and then you can also add a calendar by saying create new calendar. But I think most of these will already be in the template. For what you need. Like the standard already has all your holidays in it, so you don't have to worry about that. But let's go through and let's add a holiday that is something specific to your project. So does anyone have like a weird holiday that they've had to input in before? Or like maybe a day where you don't have access to the site or something, like if you have a renovation on a college, you might not be able to work like the Friday of a college football game.
Like Columbus Day on the construction site.
A what?
Columbus Day. on the construction,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. So if you sure. So let's go through and add, I don't know, say that for some reason you can't work on, I don't know, what's today, the 3rd? Let's say that for some reason you can't work on the 14th for some random holiday that you have on that. Okay, we do Juneteenth. So click on June 19th. So does everyone have their holiday open or their calendar open?
Yes.
Okay. So click on June 19th on your calendar. Click on the actual cell for the day. And then now click on the first empty cell down here in exceptions. So I clicked on the cell for the day, and now I'm going to click on the first empty row down here. And you should see that once you did that, it highlighted in black the date that you just clicked on. So now we'll add in the holiday. I don't know. So I typed in the holiday, or I typed in the name. When I hit enter, you'll see that the dates are going to populate for that day. Oops, sorry. So the dates populated for that day. And now it's blocked off on the calendar as a holiday. I didn't mean to hit enter right after, but. So then let's go through and let's say that on the 4th of July, you know that no one's going to come to work on the 5th. So you want to go ahead and make that a holiday as well. So then you can click on the 5th of July and you can do the same thing. You can say like 4th of July continued or something like that. So now you just blocked off both the 4th and the 5th on your calendar. So that's how you would go through. So even though the holidays are set up in the template, you still want to check them and you still want to make sure that they're set up for the holidays for your specific job site. You'll also want to span through, so even though they're set up, you do want to check it for reasons like the 5th of July. So maybe just for prevention in the baseline, you want to just plan that no one's going to work. And so then it's just strictly a work ahead day if people do work that day. Any other questions on how to add a holiday to the calendar? Okay. And then let's add the calendar day calendar as well. So click OK, and that's going to save the changes that you just made to your calendar. And then go back to change working time. So it's in the project ribbon, change working time. And now let's click on create new calendar on the right-hand side. So we're in the project, change working time, and then create new calendar. So then it prompts you to name your calendar. I'm going to name this calendar day. Okay. And then it says make copy of. For this, it doesn't matter because we're creating a new one anyway. We're going to delete everything out. We're going to, if you were to make like say a 6-day work week, but you wanted your holidays to carry over, that's where you would make sure that you're making a copy of the one that already has the holidays in it. So you don't have to redo that. But for this case, we're deleting it anyway. So it doesn't matter what we make a copy of. So create new calendar, name it calendar day, and then select OK. Any questions there? Does anybody want to see that again? Anybody want to see it again but not saying it? Okay, so we went to project, change working time, and all we did was create new calendar on the right-hand side. So create new calendar, titled it calendar day, and then selected OK. So now to change this to a calendar day, the first thing that we want to do is delete out the holidays. So you can either click on each holiday and say delete. Deleted all the holidays. Okay. Did anyone else have theirs all deleted?
I think it's based on if you create it.
Oh, if you created a new one.
Yeah, a new one instead of from the standard.
Okay. Okay. So if you wanted to delete all of them at once, you can just click and drag and then just say delete. And that's going to delete all of your holidays out. You can also use like the delete key on your keyboard. That'll delete them as well. But basically, all we're doing is just deleting all the holidays in here because we want our calendar day to count every calendar day. So then the next step for this is click on work weeks, the second tab. So you have the exceptions here, and then you have work weeks next to it. So click on work weeks, and then click on default. You see the default here? And then on the far right, you should see details. So work weeks, default, and details. And you get this new pop-up window to come up. Did anybody not get this pop-up window? It's okay if you didn't. Okay, so that was just, I'm in my calendar day, work weeks, default, and then details on the right-hand side. So this is where you can see that Monday has times in here, time of day, and they're grayed out, so we can't change those. Same thing with Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So click on Saturday, and you'll see that there's no times in here for Saturday. You guys see that? So then in order to make this a working day, we're going to change these options up here with the bullet points. So say set days to these specific working times. So the third bullet point. So we clicked on Saturday, and then we'll say set days to these specific working times. And this is where you want to mimic the times that were in your other days of week. So you want to do 8 to 12, 1 to 5. So on the from the very first cell, you can click on it and just type an 8. Type an 8 and hit enter, and it'll give you 8 to 9. So then click on the cell that says 9 o'clock and just type in a 12. So now your first block is the 8 to 12. And then underneath that in the second block, we want to do the same thing and mimic it. So we're going to type a 1. 12 p.m. So we're going to type a 1 and a 5. So your Saturday should read 8 to 12, 1 to 5. And if you want to check your work with the Friday, you'll see that the grade out is the same, 8 to 12, 1 to 5. So the reason that it's important to match it is so that you don't have an activity that's ending at 5 p.m. one day and then jumping to a different time of day. So say you had like 8 to 4, then the next activity is going to try to start at 4:01 if it's on a different holiday or a different calendar where it has a different time frame of the day. So that's why you want your time frames to be consistent so that you have full days for your durations. So then we'll do the same thing on Sunday. So click on Sunday and say set days to these specific working times. So Sunday, set days to these specific working times. And then from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock and 1 p.m. to 5. Okay, is everyone good here? Okay, so I'm going to move this over so you can see it. So when I click OK, and when you guys click OK as well, you should see all of this gray is gone, and it opens everything up to be a working day. So does everybody see that? So now you have a calendar day calendar. So then does anybody know what you would assign this to? You could. So this would be what you assign to like your contract days, like your contract date, so that your float values are measured in calendar days. So if you're behind, it's going to measure in calendar days. Also your cure activities you want to put on a calendar day so that it can cure over the weekend.
So what is the, if you schedule using ED
Sure.
days,
Mhm.
is that the same, like, is that the same? To kind of bypass that?
Kind of, yeah. I have seen errors come up where it's not counting the days correctly. So I like to just add it to the calendar to calendar, just because I've seen too many issues with the ED where it sometimes will make something start like a month later.
Okay.
And I don't know why. But in theory, yes, it's the same thing. Yeah. All right. Any questions on this so far? Any questions on the calendar? Okay. Perfect. So then select OK. So now let's add durations for the milestones. Go ahead and type a 0 into the duration for all your milestones. It'll activate them all as milestones and give you a diamond. So all I'm doing is clicking in the cell and just typing a 0 and enter. Okay. So now we want to make them all auto-scheduled. So there's a couple ways that you can do that. So you can either just click on this push pin at the bottom, and you can click the drop down of the push pin and change it to auto. So I'll do that one more time. So I'll click on building permit on the left, this blue push pin, or I guess it's like a teal push pin. Click on the cell and it'll give you a drop down arrow. So then on the drop down arrow, change it from manually scheduled to auto. It should be filling in your dates as it's doing that.
Same.
It's the same. You could do that as well. Yeah. So what you just asked was in the task ribbon here. So I can click on this next one that has the push pin and I can change it up here to auto. That's another way that you can change it.
But do we need to change everything or automatically it's going to change while we are putting the link and the
Yes, it'll change just when you've clicked on. Just the task you have clicked on. Yeah. So then another thing that you could do is you can use like Excel and you can drag. So I'm going to click on the first one that's auto scheduled here, that's above all the push pins. And once you get this icon, so I clicked on it, and when I get like the plus sign icon, you can just drag it, yeah. And that will change them all. So I'll do that one more time. So I clicked on the first auto, or the top auto schedule that I want right here. So I clicked on this cell. When I get this icon that looks like a skinny plus sign, And this is just like Excel. It's just very big because I'm a mouse big right now. And just click and drag. And it'll fill those down. Anybody want to see that again? Okay. Awesome. All right. So now if you wanted to change the calendar on your activities, so there's a couple different ways that you can do that. So let's take the tracking substantial completion and let's put this on a calendar day. So that's basically going to say that your float value or your slack value is going to be counting in calendar days rather than working days. So it's not going to change anything with the other activities in the schedule. It's just going to change this one activity. So I'm going to double click on it and it's going to bring up my task details. So double click on tracking substantial completion and you should see your task details. You guys see that here? So the task details, this is going to give you just general information on the activity itself. So you can see it's auto scheduled, you can see the dates, it'll show you the predecessors, if you have resources. But right in the middle, you should see the advanced tab. Did you guys see that when you click on it? And do you see down here, it says calendar? So none means the standard calendar, because that means that nothing has been overridden as the default. So none means it's just on the standard for the project. So change it from none to calendar day. So all I did was double click on tracking substantial. And in this advanced tab in the middle, you should see calendar. So change this drop down from none to calendar day. All right, and then select OK. So now your substantial completion is going to be on calendar days. Another thing that I see people like to do is they like to put the actual milestone summary on calendar days. You won't see a difference here right now, or let's do the overall project template because this has a duration. Did you guys have 18.5 or do you have a duration in yours? Okay, so click on this first row, double click and bring up the pop-up window the same way. Okay, so go ahead and change this one also to calendar day.
Oh,
Okay.
did you not save it before when you probably?
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Didn't save your calendar? Okay.
Missed that part.
So in the advanced tab, when you change this one to calendar day and say OK, so now your summary task is calculating the duration in calendar days. So I'm going to do that one more time. So you'll notice that the date stayed the same. So it's still June 1st to June 28th. But this 18.5 days is actually going to change to 27.5 because all it's doing is it's just taking this overall summary and it's just giving you the data in calendar days rather than in working days. It's not changing any activities in your schedule. That's a big misconception is people think it's going to change everything underneath it, but it doesn't. If you add a logic tag to a summary task, it does. But if you add just the setting for what calendar it's counting on, it's not changing anything else. Any questions on that?
You linked something to that, right?
Yes. So, well, it wouldn't let you because it's above everything else, but yes. Yeah. But I wouldn't recommend tying any logic to your summary tasks because it, yeah, a lot of people do, and it just creates problems. All right. Any questions on calendars? Okay. Awesome. So then also in the project ribbon, the options for set baseline, we'll go over how to set a baseline once we've created it. So that'll be in a later class. But this is where you can access set baseline. It's also where you access a status date of the project. So that'll be like your status date is going to be like the date of your schedule update. So once you've put all of your information in, then you'll update the project to a new status date. And that's what that's going to reflect. It'll be the date that your schedule is current to. Okay, then the view ribbon, this is where you change what you're actually looking at in your file. So this is where you can access your filters and you can access different groupings. You can highlight tasks and you can also change your outline structure to collapse. So this isn't changing anything as far as the logic in your project or any of the ties that you have or anything like that. All it's doing is just changing what you're looking at. So when you're creating a 3-week look ahead, you can use a filter to create the 3-week look ahead, and it's going to filter your project, but it's not changing your project. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. And then in Gantt chart format, same way. This is just changing what you're looking at, and it's changing everything that's here on the right-hand side of your Gantt chart. So if you wanted your task, so say you want your milestones to read the milestone date and then the name, click on the Gantt chart format ribbon, and then format with the paint bucket. Do you see that? Click on bar styles. So Gantt chart format, bar styles. So this is just the Gantt chart format ribbon. Right? So click bar styles and you should get this new pop-up window. Sure. So Gantt chart format, the last ribbon. Do you not have Gantt chart format?
Not have it.
Okay, so if you don't have it, click on something in your table. Just click on an activity.
That is, it'll click on format.
Because
Oh.
okay. Sometimes it might say like task form if you're if you have something else selected.
Yeah, it's format.
Oh, yours just this format? Okay.
So when you look up there and then look here.
Okay, so it's a little different.
And like purple writing above it, it says Gantt chart tool. If you look there, then
Okay. Okay. So then do you guys see the paint bucket? Okay.
Huh? Oh, there's the paint.
Okay. You guys see the paint bucket?
Yeah.
Okay. So then click bar styles. Okay. Did anybody not get there?
here again.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, this one's kind of hard if your eyes is mostly look different than mine, but it's the last ribbon on the right. So click on the very last ribbon, and then you should see the paint bucket for format. And then select bar styles. Okay. And then does everybody have this pop-up window here? Okay. So we're going to change the milestones and all of the formatting. I mean, this is like your preferential is what you would say. It's not changing anything with the logic on the file. This is just what you're looking at. So click on milestones, which should be the third one down. Do you guys see that? And then do you see where it says bars and then it says text? Select text. And then you should see left is blank, right says task finish. Okay, so click on left and change left to read finish, or you can do task finish, but start typing in finish and it should pop up. And then on right, start typing the word name. Okay, so does everyone have that? On the left-hand side, it says finish, and the right-hand side says name. So when you click OK, you'll see that your milestones are going to change the formatting to what you just told it to format a milestone as. So I'm going to click OK. And now my milestone has the date and then the name. Everybody see that?
Yeah, cool.
Okay. So I mean, this is again preferential, so you could change it to whatever you wanted, but this is how you can change it to read the names. Any questions on that? Anything else that you guys would like to put next to an activity that you'd like to see how to do it? We'll go through it once you have activities again in the training, but just as far as basics of what we just did, any questions? Or do you guys want to do that again? Okay. Awesome. I don't know. No one's giving me anything, so I don't know here. Let's do it one more time, just in case. Okay. So we're in the Gantt chart format, and then format and bar styles. Okay. So in the bar styles, this time let's change an actual task itself. So the very first one says task. You guys see that? So then click on text on the left little tab thing. So it says resource name as the default. So let's instead change this to just read name. And then since it's a task and not a milestone, we won't put the date. We'll just have name on the right and that's it. So I'm on the task and then text. And on the right-hand side, I changed it to just read name. So when I select OK, then you should see that this one blue bar that we have should now have the name next to it. So I'm going to select OK. And now it has my weather delays dash remaining next to the name. So then when you're reading your schedule, it's just a little bit easier to follow along with the name. You can always take that off later, but it's giving us the names on the right-hand side. And those are the primary, I mean, that's where everything is with the ribbons. There's one more that we'll go over in Gantt chart format, and it's this very first one called text styles. So do you see how we have this, the Futura, is that how you say it? Futura. So that's the font, but if I was to add an activity, so I'm just going to insert it for the example, it's coming up in Calibri. So if I want this to come up in this same text that we have everything else in, go back to Gantt chart format and select text styles. So Gantt chart format or just format. And then on the far left, text styles. You might have to hit your escape key. It's doing that thingy thing. No, that's okay. It happens all the time. If you get frozen and you get it keep singing at you, hit your escape key. Usually that will exit you from whatever's frozen. Except for
Printer connection.
Yeah, that is too.
in text styles?
Yeah.
Is there
And
what?
we're waiting for printer connection. I said server busy.
Does anybody get
Go
the
away.
Push switch to it, it goes away.
Yeah,
did anybody actually get okay, you guys got it?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mine does when I open up my phone, it always wants to exit printer. It takes 5 or 6 times to open it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, I'm in now.
Okay.
Text styles.
Okay, perfect. So text styles. So the first section says item to change and it says all. So under all, we're going to actually choose the font. Where is that? I might have to actually go find it. Yeah. I guess I don't have it on my computer. Does anybody have it?
Yeah. Which one?
Okay, the Futura.
Yeah.
I don't have it on my computer. I think that's why it's not coming up. I'm just going to change it to Arial just so that I can show you the example. So I'm choosing Arial to be my default font. If you have Futura, select that one instead. So we're under Gantt chart format, text styles, and that's what this pop-up window is. So leave it as all and change your font to Futura if you have it. I'm changing mine to Arial because I don't have it. Okay?
Should be in alphabetical order.
It should be, yeah. Okay. If you don't have it, just do Arial or whatever. I'm just typing Arial. Calibri. All right. So then select OK. So when you have your new text, select OK. And you should see that everything just changed your font. All of your font just changed throughout the schedule. Okay. So now when I add another new activity, it's going to add it in Arial because I just changed my default text to Arial. So text styles, that was Gantt chart format, text styles, and this is where we accessed the pop-up of how to change your font. All right. Awesome. Okay, making sure we didn't miss anything. The only thing that we didn't go over yet is just adding in columns. So say you wanted to change your calendar on a few different activities, or you wanted to check your calendars that you have assigned. So to add a column, there's a few different ways you can do it. You can select, I'm just moving this by clicking on the middle and just dragging it. Do you guys see that? It's like splitting the screen. You can just drag it.
Yes.
So you should see at the very end, it says add new column. Okay, so click on that and you should get a list of names for columns that you can add. All right, do you guys see that? Okay, so start typing in. So calendar is actually under task calendar. So start typing in the word task and you should see task calendar pop up as an option. Do you guys see that? So then hit enter. Okay. So do you see add new column on the far right? You'll either have to scroll over or move this over. Okay. Do you have a scroll bar at
You can right click.
Mhm.
Well, you can right click.
Mhm. Yeah, you can do that too if you don't find it.
I didn't even go ahead and enter.
Some people delete it. Some people delete it and then they will be like, how do I get it back?
Always right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does everyone see add new column? Okay. So click on it and then start typing in task and you'll see task calendar. And hit enter. Okay. And then you'll see the ones that we assigned to a calendar day, you'll see that popped up. If you want to hide a column, so say I want to hide resource names, right click, when you get this arrow here, do you see this arrow that's pointing down? Right click on the column heading and say hide column. So I just right clicked at the top and hide column, and now that's not showing anymore. You would just insert a new column, so you'd add new column for resource name. So that it doesn't delete, it just hides it.
So it says, add new column.
And then you could find the resource names and add it back. Yeah.
So it's not like Excel where you can just go over there and click it.
It's not like it's not like a hide unhide. Yeah. Resource name was the one that was shown. If you're hiding a column that we're adding one, you probably know what you want to add already. You're probably because you can make text fields in here that are representing different areas or something. So you'll have that to then choose. So then if you wanted to hide it, I'm going to right click again and say hide column. Okay. And so predecessors, if you wanted to hide that, you could right click and hide it. Or say you wanted to show the successor column. So you have predecessors and next to that you want successors. So I'm going to right click on the one that I want it to go to the left of. So I'm going to right click on task calendar because I want it to go to the left of that. And I'm going to say insert column. This is the same as Excel. I don't know why I did that. Yeah, so then insert column and then successors. All right. So then you should see if you did tie together your submittals, you should see that they're populated in those columns. So those are the basics of just how to add a column, how to show different information. So again, if you're adding a column and hiding it, you're not deleting it, you're just not showing it on your screen. Any questions there?
Make a note that the resource name, you want to put in your subcontractor